Hi there, I'm Monica Lindstrom, and this is Legally Speaking on KTAR.FM. I'm very excited because we have a special Legally Speaking for you. I had the opportunity to interview the lead defense attorney, Kirk Nurmi, from the State versus Jodi Arias case. You probably remember that case. It was a big deal around these parts, right? Well, the interview was a lengthy interview full of a lot of great information, so we decided to split it up into 5 different segments, and we will be rolling out new segments each day this week. Did you have to ask Jodi Arias for permission to write this, and how did you get around the issues of confidentiality that you owe to your client?
Well, let me say, as you well know, I'm not going to get into some of the specifics of it, but let me say this. As you well know, as an attorney, a client can waive confidentiality by their conduct, by their actions, by the things they do and say. And I limited my disclosure to those things that I thought that Ms. Arias had, in essence, waived confidentiality on. And you'll see in the book, I say, I don't want to discuss that. Or in interviews, I say, no, that's confidential because I don't feel like Ms. Arias de facto waived the privilege with her actions.
Have you talked to her about this book?
No.
There is a part in here that you write. Let's see if I can find it because it's highlighted. And I love
She
it.
highlighted the book, so there we go. That's the selling point, ladies and
I'm
gentlemen.
telling you, there were a lot of parts. I think it was page 191.
Oh, dog eared and everything.
Well, I would definitely want to bring this one
Uh-oh.
up. Here it is. Okay, you say, there were so many times that you were dealing with her that you just had to bite your lip. Take the upper road, not say anything, just do your job.
Yes.
As Wolfley says over on Arizona Sports, do your job, right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Well, yeah, I do, but it usually doesn't this analysis usually involve like putting on a warrior or a shield, something like that? Yeah.
So you say, to this I had much to say, but I could not respond in a way I wanted because I was trapped. I was still her lawyer, and I was obligated to act professionally. Beyond this reality, I knew that I would still have to deal with her in the future, so I listened to her, and basically listened to her whining, her complaining, her pain in the buttness, right? As today is a different day, in my final book, which I'm looking forward to, by the way, I plan to include a letter directed at Ms. Arias. In this letter, I will offer my response to this and many other issues so she and all of you have the opportunity to hear exactly how I feel. Spoiler alert, 9 out of 10 days was the PG version of how I really feel. If you remember that, I think it was in closings, wasn't it? When
Yes,
you
it
said,
was.
you might not like Jodi Arias. You probably said Miss Arias then.
Yeah.
I don't like her 9 out of 10 days. And oh my God, all of us, we were talking about that. Can you believe that he said that? Did it help? Did it hurt? Back and forth, back and forth. You meant it.
Well, yes, and I describe in there that I did mean it. In my next book, I talk about why I said it. All that speculation that was going on, I did hear some of that, and I got a kick out of it because it was. I felt like I set
I was speculating.
So yeah, I probably set the HLN pundits on fire with that one. I was like, holy crap!
I'm surprised they didn't make shirts that said 9 out of 10 days.
I probably should have done that, right? Because I had heard. You probably saw it more than I did, but I heard people in costumes and outside the courtroom, and who knows? I'm sure somebody has probably beat me to the punch. Somebody is now patenting 9 out of 10 days T-shirt. Well, so be it.
I'll look forward to that letter. This book. I read a lot of books, and I was very involved with this trial, this case, in the sense that I was watching it, and I was talking about it, and I was analyzing the best I could without being able to talk to any of you.
Right.
And for me to get a chance to read this and to know what was going on in your mind and what some of the things were that couldn't come out in trial was very enlightening, and it really gave a different picture of not only the case but the whole system and of you and what you and your team had to go through. And we'll learn more about that in the next 2 books. So I know I love the book. I would recommend anybody go to Amazon and order it. It is well worth the money, especially if you watch the trial. I don't care if you thought you hated this man, if you hate Jodi Arias. The information that you get about the case, I think, is invaluable. It's interesting. It's enlightening. So I highly recommend that. And I want to give you the last word. I want to give you a chance to say, what do you want us to know about this story, about this process that you went through?
Well, I think probably the most important thing I want to say, because when we talk about these things, and I know probably that as you, as a reporter and someone who was commentating on the case, we tend to talk about aspects of the case and what I said in closing and what a certain witness said and everything else. One of the fears and concerns I have, even in just talking about this book, is the idea that the tragedy of the event gets lost. You know, we've talked about everything else, and one of the things I say in the book, and I have a whole chapter about what if this never happened, you know, and I think more than anything, I want people to know, and I'm certainly sincere, and I feel this way about it, I said it in the second closing, is that I think what happened on June 4th, 2008, the day Travis Alexander was killed, was a tragedy.
Yes.
You have this beloved young man who was killed by his girlfriend or former girlfriend, and his family is obviously devastated by his loss.
Yes.
And at the same time, we have this young girl who I talk about her being troubled and everything else, who now is spending the rest of her life in prison. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve that, but I'm saying it's tragic. And I talk in that chapter about just little turns in life that could have prevented this tragedy. And I see it as nothing short of a tragedy. You know, people think that viscerally, because I'm there, I'm advocating for Jodi or things like that, that, you know, that I support what she did or that, you know, I support murder. Attorneys don't necessarily support what their clients are doing, you know, whether it's in a divorce or, you know, whatever it is, right? They don't necessarily support, they're advocating that person's story. You know, DUI attorneys don't endorse drunk driving, you know, they're not passing out booze in people's cars so they can get business. And, you know, we have to, beyond the sensational aspects, beyond everything, we have to understand that this is a tragedy. And part of the reason I write the book is to get past the sensational aspects. And say, let's take a look at this. And maybe somebody out there will say, you know, I'm going through this. Or I know somebody who's dating someone who is like this. And just stop. Or go out and seek the mental health treatment that they need. Or somebody to intercede in their life at a young point in time before it gets out of hand.
Because she didn't have any of that.
She didn't have any of that.
And it's not an excuse, but it's just something to think about.
It's a reality, and you think about one of the things I talk about in the book. What if, when she came back to live with her grandma, said, you have to get some counseling? What if that had happened? What if that had happened when she was a teenager? The whole course of events could have been different. And we wouldn't have this, and we wouldn't be sitting here. But, you know, and Travis Alexander would still be alive. And that's, you know, that's something that gets lost in all of this. And I don't want it to get lost here today. And I appreciate you giving me the moment to say that.
Absolutely. When's book 2 coming out?
Everybody asks that, and you know, one thing I learned is my first book was about 39 pages on Kindle, hence why it's $2.99. But that took me, you know, a couple months. It was kind of a rough go, and it was just a Kindle version. This took like 4 to 6 months to produce. Let's hold it up. There we go. 4 to 6 months to produce, and you know, it takes a while. It's 300 something pages, right? And 112,000 words. So I hope as soon as I can. But, you know, right now I'm going through the process of watching the trial. Doing the trial and watching the trial, as you might guess, are two different things, right? I can see things and hear things that maybe I didn't hear before or maybe I didn't recall before. And so I'm through that process. I'm like 11 days into it. I think there's 60-something days. So I'm going through that footage, and I'm able also, I mean, I see things that I wasn't able to see, not just what was going on in front of me, but what was going on behind me, because the camera was on my client or Miss Wilmot or things of that nature throughout the trial. So I'll get to see some of those things when I was, for example, cross-examining a witness. As you might guess, I don't know what's going on behind my head. I mean, you could have been back there doing jumping jacks or whatever, right? And I wouldn't know it. Or getting your workout. But, you know, I mean, all those kind of things. So for me, to bring the perspective to everyone and to write the kind of book that I want to write, I felt like I needed to go back and do that and then kind of refresh my memory of some of the things, the process, so I can give the jury, or excuse the jury, give the, the jury, the public, court of public opinion, I can give them my thoughts and just on what happened. It's just so it's fresh in my mind. So trust me, everybody, I appreciate the interest in book 2. I'm watching the videos and I'm making some notes, and I'm going to write as soon as possible as I can get 50 some more days worth of trial watched.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. Well, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. Again, this was Kirk Nurmi, Trapped with Miss Arias, book 1 of 3. The 2 are coming sometime in the future. I highly recommend it. Great story about State versus Jodi Arias and what happened before the trial. This is from the file to the trial.
From getting the file till the day of trial, first day of trial.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that concludes the special Legally Speaking series on the interview of Kirk Nurmi, who is the lead defense attorney in the State v. Jodi Arias case. I'm Monica Lindstrom, and this is Legally Speaking on KTAR.com.